My mom texted me. "You've always been difficult. We're changing the locks." "Stay away," I replied. "You might want to check the solar panel lease." I canceled the Autopay and transferred the $21,000 debt back into their names. Soon, the solar company sent them a lien warning. Their lawyer followed with, "This could cost the house." I never responded. By then, it was already too late. I was on my break at the hospital, dead tired and running on fumes, when the text came through. "You've always been difficult. We're changing the locks. Stay away." No call. No warning. No let's talk this through. Just that cold message from the people I'd been bailing out financially for years. I stared at the screen for a while, not exactly surprised but feeling completely numb. Then I typed back a simple response. "Copy that, but you might want to check the solar panel lease." That one sentence was about to turn their world upside down. Let me back up. 3 weeks before that text, I'd saved my parents from foreclosure. Yeah, you read that right, foreclosure. There were 3 payments behind on their mortgage, and the bank had already sent the final notice. My dad was still acting like it wasn't serious, like the bank was just posturing. But my mom called me crying after I got off work one night. She didn't ask directly, she never did, but I knew what she wanted. I wired $3,221 the next morning. No questions asked? That wasn't unusual. I'd been their financial safety net for years. Groceries, gas money, utility bills. Hell, I bought them a new dishwasher last Thanksgiving when theirs broke mid-cycle. They never really thanked me for anything. It was always brushed off like it was expected, like that's just what sons were supposed to do. I lived with them, sure, but I more than paid my way. I covered expenses they couldn't handle, fixed things around the house, and kept my mouth shut when they complained about me to relatives. Then came the argument that changed everything. It started over something stupid, a hallway light I'd left on after coming home late from a double shift. My mom made some comment about not running a hotel. Then my dad jumped in, bringing up everything from how long I'd been living there to my supposed attitude problem. He said I acted like I was doing them a favor just by being around. I didn't even argue back. I just went to my room and closed the door, figuring they were stressed about money again. The next morning, I got that text. Just like that, after years of being their personal ATM, after literally saving their house 3 weeks earlier, they kicked me out via text message. But here's what they forgot: that solar panel lease they'd begged me to sign. A year and a half earlier, my parents had gotten obsessed with the idea of solar panels. They said it would lower their electric bills and add value to the house. The only problem? Their credit was completely trashed. They couldn't get approved for financing. So they asked me to sign the lease? Said it would help the whole family. They promised they'd cover the monthly payments, $123 a month, automatically charged to my credit card. I believed them. I always believed them. They stopped paying after 4 months. I didn't say anything, just covered it like I always did. For over a year, I'd been paying for solar panels on the house they just kicked me out of. The same day I got their text, I logged into the solar company's website and canceled the Autopay. Then I submitted a request to transfer the lease back into their names, which I was legally allowed to do since they defaulted on their agreement to cover the payments. I didn't hear anything for 4 days. Then the emails started. First came the notice from Sunned Solar. Notice of non-payment. $21,000 remaining balance. Lien process beginning. 2 days after that, their lawyer contacted them. The message was short and terrifying. This could cost you the house. That's when they freaked out. They started calling around to family members, painting me as the villain. Told everyone I was unstable, bitter, taking revenge for being kicked out. They conveniently left out the part where they begged me to take on their debt, and then threw me out like garbage. I didn't respond to any of it. Not to them, not to their lawyer, not to the relatives who texted asking, "What's going on?" Because I knew exactly what was happening. For the first time, people other than me were seeing who my parents really were. And it was only the beginning. While all this was unfolding, I was staying with Uncle Dennis. He's the guy the family likes to forget exists until they need something fixed. He runs a small plumbing business, keeps to himself, owns his house outright, and drives a beat-up Ford with a cracked windshield. My mom had always looked down on him, said he had no ambition. But when they kicked me out and everything exploded, he just said, "You want the guest room or the couch?" Didn't ask for my story. didn't ask for rent. While I was at Dennis's place, I kept tabs on the fallout without getting directly involved. My cousin Elise called to tell me things were getting ugly. My parents were calling around asking family for money, trying to pass it off like they just hit a rough patch. They didn't mention the lien or the solar lease, just said something vague about property taxes and a bad investment. They even tried to make it sound like I was having a mental breakdown, and they were worried about me. It didn't work on Elise. She's sharp. She remembered all the times my mom had bad-mouthed Dennis behind his back while taking his help for free. She also remembered how they treated me growing up, like a spare part they could use when convenient. Then came their next desperate move. They sent my cousin Tom to Dennis's house. Tom is one of my dad's favorites, works in real estate, drives a Lease BMW, always acts too busy to finish a sentence. He showed up claiming he just wanted to check in and talk about the family situation. Dennis didn't even let him pass the porch. Told him to leave and not come back unless he brought food. That night, 2 of Dennis's tires were slashed. No note, just 2 clean cuts and a rusty folding knife tossed near the driveway. They didn't even try to hide it. Dennis didn't say much at first, just fixed the tires himself and installed security cameras the next day. But I could tell it got to him, not because of the damage, but because of what it meant. The people we were dealing with weren't just desperate, they were reckless. That's when something shifted in me. Up until that moment, I'd been reacting, watching, waiting. Now I was ready to act. If they wanted to escalate this, fine. I knew things about their finances they'd spent years trying to hide. The lien had triggered a reassessment by their mortgage company. Suddenly, paperwork started surfacing, missed payments, late fees, questionable financial activity. The bank requested additional documentation from my parents. According to Elise, the panic in that house was thick enough to choke on. I didn't have to lift a finger. They were unraveling all on their own. Things escalated again when Elise told me my parents had started calling relatives who weren't even in the country, cousins in Canada, an aunt in Puerto Rico, asking for loans and claiming I'd committed fraud. The problem was, it wasn't fraud. Everything I'd done was logged and approved within the lease terms. There were records of every payment I'd made on their behalf, receipts, bank statements, confirmation emails, all tied to my name and account. So I printed it all out. Every page. I mailed copies to their lawyer with a note that said, in case they left this out. No signature, no return address, just documentation. After that, things went quiet for 3 days. Dead silent. Then I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was my dad, probably using a burner phone. We need to talk face to face. Don't bring Dennis. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my friend Jesse from work. He used to be a cop, now does security consulting. I asked him what would happen if a lien triggered a default clause in a mortgage agreement. If the bank sees a risk of non-payment, they'll demand full resolution, he said. If your parents can't pay, they're done. That's when I decided to push harder. I knew my dad had an undeclared side business, little construction jobs he did for cash, never reported to the IRS. He kept records though, bad ones, stored on his old laptop. The one he thought I didn't know the password to. But I'd fixed that computer once, and he never changed the password back. I logged in, screenshotted everything, and sent copies anonymously to the IRS whistleblower hotline. Not because I wanted them destroyed, but because I wanted them cornered. They'd played the victim, lied to the family, and attacked the one person who'd bailed them out again and again. It was time to see how they acted with no more lifelines. By the end of that week, they were scrambling. Dennis got a call from an old friend of my dad's, someone I'd never even met. The guy said he'd been asked to float them a bridge loan, but he wanted to know what was really going on. Dennis told him flat out, "Don't. They're in a mess they built themselves." That same night, someone broke a window at Dennis's place. Didn't take anything, didn't even come inside. Just smashed the glass and ran. Dennis called the cops this time, filed a report, and gave them the security camera footage. The guy had worn a hoodie and mask, but we recognized the walk. It was Tom. Dennis stared at the video for a long time, then shook his head. "They're not going to stop," he said. "Not until everything burns." The lien had pushed their mortgage into technical default. The lender sent a notice of intent to accelerate the loan, code 4. "We're about to foreclose." My mom finally cracked and started crying to relatives for the first time in years. She didn't cry when they kicked me out, But now that the house was at risk, suddenly it was tears and phone calls and fake humility. Elise organized a family meeting. Said enough was enough, that we all needed to talk. The meeting was at Aunt Lydia's house on a Sunday afternoon. Everyone sat in plastic chairs in her backyard like it was a barbecue, except nobody was eating. When Dennis and I arrived, the room went quiet. My mom looked like she hadn't slept in days. My dad wouldn't meet my eyes. The first words out of my mom's mouth weren't, "I'm sorry." They were, "This has all been blown out of proportion." She tried to spin it, saying they didn't mean to cut me off, that they were just under pressure, that kicking me out was a miscommunication. My dad claimed I'd overreacted by involving the lease. Elise didn't let them get far. She stood up and read aloud from the lien notice. Then she read from an IRS response letter. They were opening a preliminary inquiry based on submitted evidence. That's when everything exploded. My parents panicked. Dad shouted. Mom cried again. They accused me of trying to ruin them, of wanting them homeless. They said Dennis had poisoned me against them. Tom tried to speak up, but Elise shut him down immediately. She'd seen the security footage. He couldn't deny it anymore. Then, unexpectedly, the rest of the family started turning. Not all at once, but slowly. Aunt Lydia asked why my parents hadn't told anyone about the lien. Uncle Greg asked why they'd asked him for money while leaving out that the house might be taken. Even Rosa, who'd always sworn Dad could do no wrong, looked at them like she was seeing something new. After the meeting, Elise pulled me aside with unexpected news. She and Greg were going to cover the lease balance, not for my parents, but to save the family home. They'd pay Sunrid directly, clear the lien, then place their own lien on the property until my parents repaid them in full. It was ruthless and perfect. The payment went through that Tuesday. Greg and Elise wired the full amount directly to Sunrid. The lien was cleared by Thursday morning. Just like that, the threat of foreclosure disappeared. But so did the illusion of my parents' victimhood. Greg didn't just stop at covering the debt. He had his lawyer draw up an airtight lien agreement. If my parents missed even a single payment toward repaying the $21,000, Greg would move to claim partial ownership of the property. My parents were too stunned to argue. Suddenly, they weren't in control of anything. Then came the real consequences. Uncle Dennis got a call from a federal investigator. The IRS had flagged one of my dad's under-the-table jobs, a roofing contract he'd done supposedly off the books. The contractor who'd hired him had been audited and dropped my dad's name to save himself. Combined with the documents I'd submitted, it was enough for a formal case. Dennis asked if I knew anything about it. I didn't lie. He just nodded and said, "They're going to drown in the hole they dug." 2 days later, there was a fire in their garage. Started late at night. No one was hurt, but half the garage went up in smoke. Fire department ruled it electrical, but I didn't buy it. They'd kept all their old paperwork in there. Insurance refused to pay out. The wiring hadn't been up to code, and there was no inspection record for recent work my dad claimed to have done. That's when they completely cracked. They went back to the family again, but this time they weren't asking for help. They were blaming everyone. Blamed Greg for stealing their house. Blamed Elise for airing dirty laundry. Blamed Dennis for turning me against them. They even left me a voicemail. My mom's voice, warped with anger. "We should have never trusted you. You were never ours. Never ours." Like I was a stray they'd picked up and regretted. But the worst wasn't the fire or the IRS or the money. It was the letter, handwritten, sent to Dennis's house in a cheap envelope. No return address, just one sheet of paper. "You should have died instead of Dad." Dennis's face didn't move when he read it. He handed it to me and walked out to the yard, standing there for a long time just staring at the road. That letter changed everything. I realized this wasn't about money anymore. This was rot, deep, old rot that ran through every part of their lives. And maybe, just maybe, they were finally beginning to smell it. After 3 quiet weeks, Elise sent a text. "They want to talk. At Lydia's. Family only." I showed up, and so did Dennis. My parents sat side by side on the couch like they were back in church. My mom started talking immediately, apologizing for the text, for changing the locks, for how they treated me. She listed things like she'd been rehearsing, the solar lease, the lies, kicking me out after everything I'd done. My dad jumped in too, saying I'd always been generous, that they were ashamed, that they didn't know how bad things had gotten. They said they were grateful to Greg and Elise for covering the lien, that they were working with the IRS, making payments on time, paying back every dollar. They even admitted to sending Tom to Dennis's house. Everyone else seemed moved. Elise looked like she might cry. Even Aunt Rosa said she was proud of them for taking responsibility. But I sat there thinking about the voicemail where Mom said I was never really theirs. About the letter Dennis got. About the slashed tires. About the way my dad used to look at me when I came home with groceries, like I owed them. The more they talked, the more I realized something. They weren't sorry they hurt me. They were sorry the family saw them do it. They weren't seeking forgiveness, they wanted restoration. They wanted to go back to when I was the son who paid without asking, who kept quiet, who took the abuse because that's just how things are. When my dad looked at me and said, "We hope you can forgive us," I said nothing. Not out of malice, but out of clarity. I'd seen this show before. Everyone else believed them. I didn't. It took exactly 3 weeks. 21 days of silence, and then the next move came. Last Friday, I got a letter from the county, a notice that a quitclaim deed had been filed transferring 25% ownership of their house to me. No warning, no heads up, just legal paperwork dropped on my doorstep like a bomb. At first, I thought maybe they were trying to give me something as an apology. But I knew better. Dennis helped me dig into the timing. Their mortgage company had reviewed the new repayment plan Greg and Elise had forced on them and decided the house was still too risky unless they could show family co-ownership and stable financial standing. They needed my name on the deed to make the bank back off. They didn't call to ask or explain, they just signed me up, probably figuring I wouldn't fight it. But here's the part one didn't see coming. A few hours after I got the letter, Dennis got one too. From a lawyer. My dad had listed Dennis as a co-signer on a small business loan application. Someone had used Dennis's name and ID to try to get a $30,000 line of credit. They were denied, but it triggered a fraud alert. Same week, same timing? I don't believe in coincidences, and neither does Dennis. Now it's not just about the house. Now it's identity theft, and that's criminal. Dennis filed a police report. I called the lawyer who helped Greg with the lien agreement and had them draft a rejection of the deed transfer. I never signed for it, never agreed to it, and now I'm submitting a legal request to reverse the ownership transfer. The fake apology was just a pause before their next play. The only thing that changed was their tactics, quieter, more complicated, but still the same underneath. I'm more tired than angry now. Tired of cleaning up behind them. Tired of trying to make people see what they really are. But I'm also ready. And if this is going where I think it is, this won't be my last update. Because people like them don't change. They just wait for the next opportunity to strike.